The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States. The cost of freedom is always high. No one can foresee precisely what course it will take. One path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender.
Oh, it's a new X-Men. And Lena Lamont's in to tell us all about it with the film review. Good morning, Lena.
Good morning, Wammo.
Good morning to you. And what did you? I mean, I've never followed the X-Men series, so I don't really know where to start.
Well, if you haven't and you do want to start, definitely start with the original first one, the 2000 film, because that's where we're introduced to these characters, very much already in flow, if you will.
Okay.
Then they did a sequel to that, which some people really liked. I didn't like it so much. They veered off and done Wolverine's own story, which again, mixed reviews. Here, X-Men First Class, I think it's a masterstroke. They've gone back and done a prequel. And it's wonderful because they're filling in all of the gaps as to how they got to be the X-Men.
Okay.
And brings us right up to, actually it doesn't bring us right up to, but it fills in a lot of the gaps leading up to the first original X-Men film. And I have to say they do it with aplomb, as they say.
Yeah? Okay, well, okay, as far as prequels go, you know, lately they've been pretty good. Say, like the Batman.
Batman Begins, I thought, was just amazing.
Really dark.
Totally.
Gritty.
And brilliant setup, right, of in this case, it was Christian Bale's first Batman outing, but wonderful setup of why is he the angry, bitter kind of guy that he is.
And the same with the James Bond franchise. They've gone back.
That's very true.
Into his early career, and it's also very dark and gritty. Now, as far as I know about X-Men, it always has been a little bit dark, is that right?
Well, yes, it has, but I suppose what we never really knew was how did these people come to be? And they're not people, they're mutants. How did these mutants come to be who they are? And we're aware right from the beginning of the original X-Men, the 2000 film, that there is an enmity between Patrick Stewart's character, Charles Xavier, Professor Xavier, or Xavier as they call him, and Magneto, Ian McKellen's Magneto. So we know there's history there, but we don't really understand or know very much about what's happened. So again, this wonderful thing about the prequel is that we're thrown right back to when they originally meet and their relationship, if you will, develops and how things evolve.
Have they kept with the same actors?
No, not at all.
No.
And that's another nice thing. They're all newbies. No, they're not new to acting, but they're new to the X-Men because, of course, they've got to be younger. So
kind of like the Star Trek prequel.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is, and that was good, right? The Star Trek prequel was
brilliant.
A fantastic film.
Loved it.
And I'm pleased to say that the X-Men definitely I would liken to the caliber of Batman Begins and Star Trek Legacy.
No idea.
Whatever the prequel was called, right? Exactly. So we've got James McAvoy, who is a young Scottish actor who we see now in every blinking film ever. He's played Scots, which of course he does well because that's his natural accent. He's played all rafts of English accent. He's played Americans. I've seen him in a film recently where he plays a Southerner. And here he is playing Charles Xavier at Oxford University, speaking very properly, being the young Patrick Stewart, and setting us up for how Xavier becomes kind of the proponent of the X-Men. And, excitingly, Magneto, who needs Ian McKellen, legend that he is, our young Magneto is an Irish actor called Michael Fassbender. Now, not many people will have seen him. Very observant viewers will recognise him from Inglourious Basterds.
All right.
But prior to that, he's in the most amazing film called Hunger, which is a desperately art house film, true story of an Irishman on hunger strike, where Michael Fassbender lost, 14 kilos or something to play this character, Bobby Sands.
So he really gets into a role.
He's an awesome actor who really gets into a role. And you know, he brings a real depth to Magneto's character. And a real intensity and a darkness, which is nicely off-played by James McAvoy's relatively light, boyish kind of Patrick Stewart. So, yeah, it works really well. The casting's great.
So it's interesting, the line of things that you can't go and just watch a prequel and then watch the others afterwards, but the prequels rely on knowledge of the future.
They do, necessarily. a friend of mine did see the prequel without having seen any of the films and said it was okay. And I thought, wow, I would have thought it would be not exactly a waste of time, but you're not going to get any of the fulfillment.
Right.
For example, right, in X-Men, the original 2000 film, we're introduced to key characters who we then meet in the prequel, obviously, as young. But it's nice to watch how they evolve into being either on the side that they're on, because there's some flipping about of who, whether they're aligned with Magneto or Xavier, and it's nice to watch that develop. There are certain character traits. I mean, when we meet Patrick Stewart's character, he's bald, he's in a wheelchair. There's no talk about how that actually happened. So you want to know, well, when I meet James McAvoy, there's no resemblance to that guy. So how does he become the Patrick Stewart? You know what I mean?
And it's in the back of your mind that you're expecting something to happen.
It is, and they give you these little revelations throughout the film. They sort of eat them out. And I found that very satisfying.
Have they left room for a Part 2 prequel?
Apparently they have. Now this is where we have to really be concerned that it's going to, God forbid it goes the way of the Star Wars.
Star Wars, I was going to think.
Yeah, they have apparently designed this prequel as the first of 3.
There's also the risk that they introduce characters that don't feature in the later movies, but that are in the prequels as well, that you don't like.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I reckon the way things are going, I feel confident enough that they'll probably do it well. Because you're right. There are characters in the later movies that we haven't even heard or seen anything about. So there is the capacity for them to bring those characters out in 2 and 3 episodes.
Enemies,
2 and 3
I suppose.
If they do that. Yep.
Yeah.
And core cast. Because they don't bring us right up to the present day, if you will. There are many years there for things to go awry and for people to grow into looking more like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen.
Yeah. I mean, are you geeky enough with it that you read some comics?
I would have to say I'm not very geeky at all, Wammo, no. So, no, and I'm not a comic book follower.
I just wonder if the prequel's already out there, to read, and whether or not...
That's a good point, actually. I had assumed that this film is, the prequel, is directed by Matthew Vaughn, who did Layer Cake and Kick-Ass. And I noticed...
Kick-Ass, brilliant.
Yeah, Kick-Ass was great. And I noticed that his writer on Kick-Ass, who is Jane Goldman, who's married to Jonathan Ross. I don't know if that all means anything. Yeah. So Jane Goldman apparently wrote the X-Men prequel. So therefore, I don't know whether, again, it's been adapted as you... That's a very good point. Whether they've adapted it from existing comic books, which give away all that bit, or whether they've come up with something completely original. I do not know.
Yeah.
And I choose not to know. Well, I'm looking forward to, episode 2 or whatever they want to call it. Yeah, I'll just go in and go, right, what do you have for me now?
Brilliant. All right. Well, it is First Class, I think, from the sounds of that.
First Class.
Yeah. The movie we've just been looking at is X-Men First Class. Lena Lamont, you can find her movie reviews in the Sunday Star Times on the weekend, and of course up at lenalamont.wordpress.com. See ya.
Path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender.
You ready for this?
Let's find out. Listen to me very carefully, my friend. Killing will not bring you peace. Peace was never an option.